Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. My name is David Quadrelli. I am joined by Harmon Dial. We're coming to you after a Canucks loss. Harm, was that a point gained? Was it a point lost? Because I'll tell you something. If I'm the St. Louis Blues and their fans, I'm looking at that game as a loss. And I'm not in terms of win or a loss, because they won the game in the end, but the Canucks sticking around in the playoff picture was because the Blues squandered that lead that they built.
Nah, man, I would disagree. It's a win all day long. You get the 2 points. That was the most important part. And yeah, a win in regulation would have been better. But you leapfrog the Canucks. You continue your winning momentum. You've got a soft schedule coming up. And don't forget, there was also a point where the Canucks were leading in the third period as well. So the Blues could have easily lost in regulation at one point. So to me, it's a massive win for the Blues all day long. And yeah, sure, it's encouraging that the Canucks, down a goal heading into the third period, found a way to get a point. But to me, I wasn't a fan of their overall performance. And for the Canucks to now be in a spot where they've got a difficult 5 games remaining on their road trip, the Blues have a relatively soft schedule coming up. Now the Canucks are playing from behind, essentially, in the standings. I don't think this is I'm not taking the moral victory of, that they got a point. I mean, a point is better than nothing, but that is still overall a disappointing performance from the Canucks, in my opinion.
But if that's your most disappointing game on the road trip, you'll absolutely take it, right? Like the Blues, let's be honest, the Blues are a good team. The Blues are a red hot team right now. Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg single-handedly end the Canucks' chances in that game. It was a big night for Brock Boeser. There's a lot of different things to get to, but just philosophically, I do look at that and I say, yeah, you wanted the Canucks to at least get a point in that game. And listen, Harm, how different is the conversation today if they don't get a point? Because they're still in this playoff hunt. All of a sudden, they're really, really they're really in the thick of it. If they squander all of the points in that game, they pick up a point, and that's important. That was really important.
But you needed 2, man. Like, you needed the win in my mind.
To.
You needed 2.
You needed one. You would have liked to.
Well, here's the thing. You look at it and say, yeah, you gained a point, but they got 2. Like, yeah, that's still a significant swing.
Yeah, so the Canucks are still in the playoffs by points percentage. They're still ahead of the Blues. So I get it's significant. Little voice crack there, but I get it's significant, Harm. But seriously, like, think about how different this conversation is if they don't get anything.
Sure, but in my mind, considering how soft the Blues schedule is and how red hot they are, the Canucks needed 2 points, man. And in my mind, I'm not saying it ends their playoff hopes. Of course, they're still in it. But let's not talk about them losing as anything but a disappointing result.
It's a disappointing result, but you're a math guy, and there's a difference. There's a difference here between needing and wanting 2 points. They didn't need 2 points last night. They needed one.
Sure, but it is a significant swing leverage-wise in this playoff race.
It's not significant.
It is.
Hold on. Where did I read this? Now I gotta find it. Look what you're making me do. You're making me do math, Harm. It's not significant. It would have been way more
on yesterday's show, we were talking about how massive the swings were, and yes, that
regulation loss.
But just because, yes, and it's lessened to some degree, but just because the Blue, or just because the Canucks got 1 point doesn't mean that it didn't have a significant swing.
Okay, I found it. No, I didn't. Jacob's gonna figure this out.
What are you looking for?
Decipher this. Just figure it out, Jacob. I did read somewhere today that it's really not like, it would have been significant if the Canucks actually dropped the point. And really, we're talking about a point in the standings. But I am absolutely
it's not
by it.
A point. It's like you lost a point and they gained a point. It's a 2 point swing.
Yes. But if they gave them 2 points, which they were, by the way, 3 seconds away from doing, right? If they gave them 2 points and didn't pick up any, I'm saying it's a lot more dramatic. It's a big hit.
Fully agree. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, the Canucks playoff odds are over. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. I'm just saying, I feel like you're taking much more glass half full perspective on, hey, they at least clawed back and got a point. Which, yeah, that's true. But to me, I think part of it too is process-wise. I didn't think the Canucks deserved to win that game.
That's fair.
To be straight up with you.
Really bad.
First period was abysmal. Their puck play resembled the way they were playing against Utah on Sunday. Kevin Lankinen bailed them out multiple times. They also got fortunate where Jordan Kyrie's shot in the first period went off the post. The Blues were creating rush chances all night. Yeah, the Canucks had a bit of a pushback in the second period. That's when they finally woke up, were more competitive, started to create some chances. But overall, I thought their performance was sloppy. I thought the Blues were a better team. And to me, especially coming off how well they played against Winnipeg, where they crushed the best team in the NHL. It's again the same story of inconsistency of why can't you string two really promising performances in a row? And I'm not talking about I was expecting the Canucks to necessarily dominate the Blues because they've been red hot, but it would have been nice to see them resoundingly control play and pick up 2 points.
All right, I've got the numbers. I'll put them up on screen. It's going to be hard for people to see, but there was a much smaller swing because of the overtime loss, but I mean, there's still a considerable swing, especially when you can look at the fact that Vancouver's playoff probabilities dropped by 3.2% and the Blues rose by 4.7%. So you're looking at a net of, what is that? 7.9, so 8% swing because the Canucks lost to the Blues specifically. So the Canucks now sit at a 31.5% chance to make the playoffs. St. Louis up to 49.1. So yeah, these numbers courtesy of moneypuck.com.
Boom, take that, Harm. Numbers.
That doesn't prove your point.
This proves Harm's point.
It doesn't though.
They're now clear second place according to this model in terms of their chances of making the playoffs.
This is what I'm saying. Okay, the Canucks get this game to overtime. If they lost in regulation, that's an 11% hit.
Yeah,
to their playoff odds. They lost in OT, so it's a 3.2% hit.
Yeah, but the goal was to win. The goal wasn't avoid a regulation loss.
And Quads, it's not just a 3.2% hit because the Blues won in overtime. So you have to factor that gain in as well. You have to factor
Let's factor that in.
No, well, sort of, but
yes,
not really.
Yes, it does. Absolutely, it does.
Jacob said it's a 7.9% swing total.
Yeah. The Canucks odds in a vacuum dropped by 3.2%.
Exactly.
But St. Louis's odds in the vacuum rose by 4.7%. But because they were playing each other, this game had a bigger impact, right? Like when people call it a 4-point game in the standings, it's not. It's just because that's how many points there could be on the swing. So I get where you're coming from, Quads, but they still needed to win that game. Their playoff odds took a significant hit with a loss, even though they picked up a point. It was mitigated a little bit by picking up a point, but the way that Harmon's describing this, I think makes sense with the numbers.
Well, I only use Dom's model anyway, so this is stupid. In all seriousness, what I am trying to get at and what I was building up to, took me 9 minutes to do it, was that a really strong game for Brock Boeser. The Canucks top line, it was going to be hard to repeat what they did against Winnipeg. We're going to talk about Brock Boeser individually, Harm, but what did you think of the Canucks top line's game? I really like Nils Höglander, obviously on that first Boeser goal. I really like Nils Höglander's game, have continued to for a while now. What did you think of the first line last night?
Through 2 periods, I thought they were relatively quiet. I didn't think they were playing poorly necessarily, but it was a lot of low event hockey. I was really closely monitoring their shifts in the first and second period, and it sort of felt like, okay, they're working hard on the forecheck, but the Blues were doing a really good job of beating Vancouver's pressure on the forecheck through the first 2 periods in general, and that included against that top line. And when the Canucks did have possession of the puck, it sort of felt like through the first 2 periods anyway, that the top line wasn't able to connect on passing ways, on passing plays as clinically, which I think hindered their ability to generate chances. The top line wasn't hurting them through two periods because they weren't giving up much defensively. But I also thought they didn't create a lot offensively. I think the best chance that they had through the first 40 minutes was a Pettersson opportunity in the slot after Höglander and Boeser had sort of hounded the puck. I think EP40 ended up missing the net on that one. But you saw in the third period that, okay, when the stakes were really on the line there and they needed to come back, they rose to the occasion. With the Boeser goal that made it 2-1, it's not just the snipe there. It's Elias Pettersson tracking back really well in the neutral zone, winning puck possession back. That play doesn't start without his hard work back checking in the neutral zone. He springs Höglander. Höglander makes the quick decisive play to the wall. Höglander continues driving the center lane, which takes the defender with him. And then I liked the decisiveness Brock showed, where there was a fraction of a second where I thought, is he hesitating here, or is he going to actually step into the slot and decisively just let it rip? He took half a second longer to step in off the wall than I thought he would, but eventually he made the move. And I mean, to beat Binnington clean there from that spot, that's an elite goal scorer shot.
A big night for Brock Boeser, no doubt. Again, 2 goals, back-to-back games, 2 goals now for Brock Boeser. Again, like I said, 3 seconds away. And you said it, Harm. You said it. They did need a point. They did need a point in that game. And Boeser got them that point.
What a pass too by Pettersson on that tying goal with 2.7 seconds left. The east-west to thread the needle like that with that little time left on the clock. Boeser, I mean, look, the slapper rocket just loading up and blasting it by Binnington, of course, is going to draw the headlines. And we know Boeser from last year's playoffs is just straight up a clutch player. But Pettersson making that poised play under pressure with not a lot of time and space, like the brilliance of that pass should not get overlooked. A strong night for him, another productive performance, even though I'm sure we'll get to the OT play that the Blues scored on later. He makes a mistake there, but overall for the top line to get on the board twice in that game is a positive sign. And now it's okay. You got 2 promising games from your first line in a row. Hopefully that's a sign that they're able to build some momentum, because that will give them hopefully enough scoring, especially if they're able to defend well and get decent goaltending through the remainder of this road trip.
Okay, we rarely ever talk about him in anything, but well, obviously we're not going to talk bad about him. He's the best player that this city's seen in a while. Didn't think it was a great night for Quinn Hughes. Did the numbers back me up on that? My eye test was telling me not a great night for Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, I agree. The numbers were pretty middling, and like you said, by the eye test, he just looked like a player that was fatigued.
He also played 30 minutes.
Like the workload in injuries, right? The workload in injuries are just kind of catching up to him. He's a human being after all, and you could see where he'd have these individual moments of brilliance where, okay, he's at the blue line and he's doing a 360 spin, but the crispness with which he was actually connecting plays just wasn't there. It felt like he was a little bit off. In the first period, he was among the players that didn't look sharp with the puck. There were 1 or 2 turnovers in the defensive end that Hughes typically doesn't make. And on the OT goal that the Blues scored, all 3 guys on the ice at that moment deserve blame to some degree, because Rick Tocchet alluded to it in his post-game press conference. That's probably a play where the Canucks should reload, because they didn't have any speed through the neutral zone. Pettersson was sort of caught flat-footed. It was essentially a 1-on-3 situation that he was walked into when Hughes made that pass. And then PD, of course, sort of mishandles it. DeBrusque makes a bad decision, bad read, to instead of sticking with the play and back checking, goes off for a change. All 3 guys were at blame there. And to be honest, I think a lot of that comes down to when you're fatigued, when you've been out there for a long time, your decision-making suffers when you're tired. And all 3 guys on that goal were partially to blame.
Yeah, but who do we blame the most? Is it time for a pie chart? Just say the word. I'll make a pie chart. I'll make a pie chart.
Make a pie chart.
So I'll make this one right now. I look at that play, and yes, we just said Quinn Hughes played 30 minutes in that game, right? I'll even get my blue cue card out for Canucks colors, okay? Quinn Hughes played 30 minutes in that game. It's hard to blame him for much, but he put Pettersson in a really bad spot. So obviously some blame goes to Quinn Hughes. Also thought he could have played it differently. And pull the video up again, Jacob. I thought he could have played it differently on the, what was it, 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 at the end?
2-on-1.
2-on-1. Thought he could have played it differently. And again, we're kind of picking apart a play that, I don't know. Quinn kind of, okay, he's on Broberg, which is the pass, right? He's on him, and then he kind of goes to the shooter. you kind of have to trust your goaltender to just stop the shot there. It's kind of what you would normally do, but as I say, from my office chair to the best defenseman in the world. But you talked about it, decision making, right? Like your brain gets a little bit fatigued as well. I would have liked to have seen Quinn stay on the pass there. So there's his part of the pie chart. It's not the biggest part. It's not the biggest part
I agree.
of the pie chart. And then we see Elias Pettersson, who, yes, like I said, gets a bad pass from Quinn Hughes, or a fine pass, but again, it's a bouncing puck. Pettersson bobbles it. But he also turned to go toward the Blues. If you have no speed, just curl back. Like, curl back.
Yeah.
I know it was tough because he didn't have possession, but part of the reason he didn't have possession is because he was trying to make a dynamic play with no speed. So there's Elias Pettersson's part of the blame. Then I think we get to our biggest part of the pie chart, and Jake DeBrusk on the line change. Like, you cannot skate to the bench that slow on a line change. I get everybody's tired. I get all three guys are tired, but skating to the bench that slow, you have to come back. You have to come back when you lose possession of the puck. And pull it up again, Jacob. Maybe he didn't realize that they were losing possession, but that was the first thing I thought of. And ultimately, who I pin the most blame on here, because that's the game we play. Who gets the most blame? I probably pin it the most on Jake DeBrusk. And yeah, no, he knew they lost possession. My bad. I just rewatched it. That was horrible by Jake DeBrusk. He gets the biggest part.
Well, also immediately lunging in too, right?
Yeah, that's
lunging in on Holloway.
Pocket calls
a speedy
swinging
player, right? It's in that spot. If you're gonna lunge in, especially at the end of a shift when you know you might be running low on gas or thinking of going off, lunging in on Holloway just isn't the right move. That's not a guy that you're gonna catch because he's such a speedy, dynamic player. The risk to reward just didn't make sense with first lunging in, and then the worst part was going off for the change.
Yeah, absolutely. DeBrusk gets the biggest part of this pie chart. Another thing on the game, Kiefer Sherwood's snipe, absolutely worth talking about. But the story with Kiefer Sherwood, I think, obviously he scores the goal. 10 hits ties this league record for hits in a season. Of course, since hits became a stat that they tracked. He's going to break it. He's going to break it very early tomorrow morning, you would assume. Knock on wood, of course. I don't know what could happen, but knock on wood always when you say something like that. But Kiefer Sherwood about to break the NHL hits record.
He was a dog on the forecheck all night. He was constantly disrupting plays, had speed and energy all night. I mean, the best shift they had in the first period was the Sherwood line's opening shift where they generated 2 shots on goal. They controlled puck in the attacking end. And funny enough, when they started the game that way, I thought, okay, Canucks aren't going to be flat here. It looks like they have their legs with them. Looks like they're playing with urgency. Unfortunately, after that, they basically couldn't spend any time in the attacking end. They were super sloppy. The first period kind of turned a minute later when O'Connor turned the puck over in the neutral zone and Blues started getting momentum and didn't look back from that point onward in the period. But yeah, I mean, Sherwood from start to finish was super noticeable, super impactful. And it's nice that he's been chipping in with some secondary offense after going cold for a little bit.
Do you think Kevin Lankin is playing too much? Obviously, talked about Quinn Hughes. Do you think Kevin Lankin is playing too much?
Probably, but they have no other choice until Demko's ready to return. I also don't think it's Lankinen's fault that they lost by any stretch of the imagination.
No. Yeah.
Thought he was brilliant in the first period. A couple of tough breaks too. The point shot that the Blues scored on in the second period, I believe it was, deflected off Quinn's stick. It's a pretty significant change in direction, tough for goaltender to track. Tyler Tucker's point shot goal as well in the third period deflected off DeBrusk. So a couple of tough breaks for Lankinen, not much he could do on those ones. And then the Broberg goal as well. I mean, that's just a really sweet move on a 2-on-1. Not really. And then the Holloway goal too. He really had no chance on that one. That's an east-west play where Myers, I didn't like the fact that he was on Holloway, and I think he started leaning in towards Kyrou, thinking that Quinn might need some support. And by sort of doubling down towards Kyrou, left the passing lane open to Holloway. Again, don't think Lankinen had much of a chance on that one either.
Yep, you're absolutely right. The reason I bring it up is because Ian McIntyre was reporting today that Thatcher Demko might play, obviously he's on this trip, might play in one of the New York games. So obviously the Canucks face excuse me, Canucks face the Rangers, and then they've got the Devils and the Islanders as well. So we're keeping an eye on that. If Thatcher Demko makes a return, we'll see. We'll see. Canucks play the Rangers tomorrow. Do you have anything else you want to say about the Blues game, Harm?
Gonna jot through my notes, but
Thought it was a bad night for Elias Pettersson. Thought it was a good night for Philip Hronek. Those are other things I had in my notes. Elias Pettersson played like 10 minutes of ice time.
Yeah, I think those are pretty fair observations.
Okay. Rangers, Canucks, two very, very desperate teams. You want to talk about playoff odds? Talk about these two teams. The Rangers are absolutely fighting it. They are trying to not completely fall out of the playoff picture. They've lost 3 straight games. They're going to look to right the ship tomorrow, whereas the Canucks obviously are also, you would expect, going to be playing pretty desperate. Obviously, the big story here is that it's JT Miller's first game against his former club. JT Miller spoke today, and there were some good quotes that came out of it. We're going to talk about the Rangers game a little bit after. I want to start with the Miller quotes because I think that's arguably the most important thing that Canucks fans want to hear about right now. So let's see what JT Miller had to say. This first quote was just on his time with the Canucks, how it all ended, all that sort of stuff. He also gave a quote about the Pettersson stuff, but we'll talk about that after. This is what Miller said about Vancouver and the trade. He said, I don't want to get into too much detail, but yeah, I think a fresh start was needed. I've got nothing bad to say about the Canucks or Vancouver as a city. We loved it there. It felt like home, and that's all you can ask for. But unfortunately, this is a business, and in the business end of things, it was getting difficult. That was in response to IMAC asking about the quote from Patrick Allvin that a fresh start was probably needed, and JT agreeing with that. And then this next one, the quote that everybody was wondering about, Elias Pettersson, obviously that became public. This is what Miller said about it. The whole me and Petey thing, it's still blown out of proportion. I get what Jim Rutherford was doing. I have a ton of respect for Jim, and I talked with Jim after that story. Obviously, that's the one with Gary Mason in the Globe and Mail. He goes on to say, I wasn't mad. I understand everybody has a job to do. Clearly, if me and Petey were better than we were, obviously this might be different, but it's also not as bad as everybody thought either. It's just an easy thing for everybody to run with. There was just a lot of moving parts. We've kept it as our policy on this show to not dive into rumors. We get people in the chat every day being like, I heard this is what happened. People know what happened. Players know what happened. Obviously, the team knows what happened. Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford, they're going to be asked about it again at end of season media avail. We're probably not going to get the full story for years, but one day we'll get the full honest story. But right now it's just a bunch of rumors and JT insisting that the whole thing is blown out of proportion. But ultimately, that is part of what led to his tenure as a Canuck coming to an end.
Yeah, overall, I mean, especially the first quote just reaffirms that the Miller that I know he's gone quiet lately, but overall has been really effective in New York. You weren't going to get that version of him in Vancouver. He looked mentally checked out towards the end of his time with the Canucks. And again, I mean, we all remember watching his first game with the Rangers and going, oh my God, when has he ever forechecked like this? When has he ever defended like this? Just the urgency and excitement he was playing with was a night and day difference compared to what we were seeing from him in Vancouver. And like I've said in the past, even just being around the locker room, like he wasn't chirping guys as much. It wasn't as lighthearted of a mood. You could tell that things weren't quite right for him in Vancouver. And that's honestly my biggest takeaway is I don't care how much success he has in New York. And I genuinely hope he has a lot of success there, but it doesn't matter if he puts up 90 points next year. Canucks weren't going to get that version of JT here anymore, in my opinion.
We've been saying it for months. Like, we've been saying that for months, and nothing's changed. You're absolutely correct. Yeah, I did like to see those quotes from JT. Obviously, he saw what happened when Bo Horvat dropped his old it's better than Vancouver quote. JT being very careful not to say anything that Canucks fans might take offense to. In fact, there was a part of that story that I apologize, Jacob, I didn't screenshot it for you, so I'm going to go find it and read it myself. he talked about Canucks fans, and this is what Miller said, and I thought this was an important part as well. He said, they created a lot of special memories for me and my family, especially in the playoffs last year. I have 3 young children, and one of their favorite memories was the fans chanting my name, probably something I'll never get back. But their honesty, their passion, I feel like I pride myself on a lot of the same things the fans do. They're obsessed with their hockey there and obsessed with their team, and they're always blunt. Not to like that would be pretty hypocritical. And he talked about it. His kids absolutely love that. And if you follow Natalie Miller on Instagram or any social media, you'll know the Pinky Miller story, which their youngest son, Owen, heard the chants and he's been doing the chant. She posted an old video of him in his crib doing the JT Miller chant at night. And then he unfortunately got his pinky stuck in the hinge of a door and chopped it clean off and had to go to the hospital. And as they were taking him down the wing toward the plastic surgeon in the hospital, he started chanting Pinky Miller to the tune of JT Miller. And to hear Natalie Miller tell that story, you could tell that the city had a huge impact on them. And obviously they laid down roots. They made a lot of friends here. But that Pinky Miller story does just crack me up. I think that's so funny that's something that happened.
Yeah, it was awesome seeing the clip of that.
It clearly meant a lot to him though. And Harm, here's the thing. You've had a lot of, I mean, one of your quotes with JT Miller just went viral from like 3 years ago.
It's wild. I don't know if you have it, Jacob, but it was 2 years ago. I wrote a feature on the double-edged sword of JT's competitiveness, right? Because it was on the heels of the previous season where towards the end of Boudreau's tenure, that was when we first got some of the lackadaisical back checks, the criticism just like around the market, and not just in Vancouver, but Hockey Night in Canada was breaking down some of his like defensive woes and missed assignments. He was becoming hot rod for criticism, but then down the stretch under Tocchet, he started to figure things out. So he was kind of in this polarizing spot. And so I'd done a ton of reporting on just like this feature around like his fiery old school type of personality. And so again, this story ran 2 years ago, and I see both on X and Instagram this quote going like viral, but where him and I were talking about the way people talk about his competitiveness, and he went, quote, "It's a lost art to give an F." And that whole interview was funny because he dropped like 4 F-bombs in a span of like 30 seconds. It was one of the most fun interviews I've ever done. But it was weird to me. Why is this blowing up like 2 years later as if this is a brand new quote that just dropped?
It's about the clicks, man. It's about the clicks. And it's funny because all the graphics were that quote with JT in a Rangers jersey as if he gave the quote yesterday. It was really funny. Did you get any credit for that? Like, did anybody point out in the post? Were they like, oh,
people were saying like courtesy The Athletic. But again, it doesn't, you would think the interview ran yesterday, not 2 years ago when he was a Vancouver Canuck.
Oh man, that's good. That's really
but it was like that whole interview and process of writing that story was really insightful because like literally one of his quotes in that story was like talking about getting into FU matches with teammates, and how it's like for him it's not like a big deal, how passionate he is, how competitive he is, and it is also interesting because around that time, I reported in that story that he's had friction with teammates, and I knew it was Pettersson at the time, but I specifically didn't want to put that, they've had their issues in the past, Pettersson and Miller, because it would have absolutely blown up in this market. It would have become a huge talking point, and at that point in time, it wasn't an issue. Like last year, it wasn't that big of a deal. So I sort of made the decision that, okay, I could report that it's PD, but I'm just going to say generally speaking. But yeah, that was one of the most fun stories I've ever written. And that's sort of what I miss about JT is just how candid and how honest he has always been about his perspective. He's the first one to say he's not a perfect player. He's not a perfect leader, but we all know that he also has a lot of positive attributes on and off the ice.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you. It's clearly he's a player that you had a pretty good relationship with. So just what it meant to him to play in Vancouver. Obviously, you would have a pretty good inclination of that. And then I was reminded of that quote from 2 years ago that's going viral right now. Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to get to?
Nope.
All right, let's get to anyone else. Before that, though, before anyone else, I want to tell you about Pacific Toyota dealers who want me to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X, an SUV packed with plenty of space. The BZ4X can handle any terrain, can take you from the city to the slopes. Plus, if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes, even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X in 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. All right. Now let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta. A great spot for all games, home and away, conveniently located just minutes from the arena. Make Greta your pre, post, or main spot to chill next time you're downtown with drinks, the iconic street food menu, and of course the arcade games. Head on down to Greta today. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. All right, anyone else? The Washington Capitals become the first team to clinch a playoff spot, just like we all thought when we were doing our season predictions. Now, Jacob, turn on your mic. Do you still have our season predictions? Obviously, we know you picked Lane Hudson to win the Calder, and that might be the only one that's accurate. Harmon picked the Devils to win the Cup. I think I picked the Oilers to win the Cup. Neither of those things are happening. Do you still have all the other ones that we made?
Somewhere. I'll have to dig for them. Do we know when it was? Was it still in September? Maybe?
It was like September, October. We did our season predictions show.
Yeah. I don't have it handy at the moment, but I'm sure I could find it.
Okay, because I want to look back.
Yeah. End of anyone else. I'll try and find it by the end of anyone else. I can probably do that. I also just quickly want to give a call out here. I've had some conversations in the chat with some people asking about copyright, how that works with clips. And I said, we'll do a summer show on it. We've said that a few times. So people in the chat, if you're listening right now, or if you're listening on Twitter or Facebook or the audio pod, leave us a comment on some different topics you might want us to do an off-season show on. It'd be nice to build a list of things like, we've talked about doing a CBA show and kind of digging into how the CBA works, or contracts and taxes, and some non-Canucks on the ice specific topics you guys might want to hear us talk about during the off season. Drop those into the chat, leave us a comment, whatever. It'd be great to start building a list of that kind of content you'd like to see from us.
I thought when you said we have some people asking about copyright, I thought you were talking about people wanting to use our content. You were about to say, yeah, we will come after you. Because we will. We absolutely will. No, we will. We will.
Just, it was people talking about using NHL clips, and, if we get copyright issues with it, and there's been other YouTube channels that have dealt with some pretty severe copyright issues from the NHL. So we've just kind of had a chat about that. But yeah, any topics like that are a little more obscure, behind the scenes. When we get into the summer, it'd be cool to do a couple shows digging into some of those topics.
I have a topic. And Jacob, I'm going to need you back for a second here.
Okay.
It is impossible to find a wedding videographer. Because I was like, okay, I definitely want the wedding filmed. I think that's going to be great. We got a great photographer. I'm super excited about our photographer. She already did our engagement shoot and everything. It looks great. Got great photos of Bert. And my future wife looked really nice in them too. But really, Bert was the star of the show, and she'll say the same thing. Videographer, I can find a videographer, but yeah, so we charge $8,000. So we're going to charge you $1,000 an hour, because I only usually there for 8 hours tops. Harm, any thoughts? What are we doing here?
Actually, I'll jump in and say I got lucky because I know how to edit videos. So I didn't need to pay someone to do the editing portion too. I just said, hey, I want to find someone who will come in, record the video, mic up, us during our speeches, get that, and then just send me all the content. And I found a guy who was from Vancouver Island. He popped on a ferry. Quads, I got married in Tawasin, right by the ferry terminal. So he came over, shot our wedding, popped on the 10 o'clock ferry back home, got a really good deal on it, and he did a fantastic job. So it's out there, but it took weeks of looking to find the right fit.
Okay.
Genuine question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How often do people actually look back on the wedding videos?
My wife has already looked back on it multiple times, and we got married in July.
Is she there?
Okay.
Put her on. Put her on.
No,
I'm just the new idea then. Chat, if anybody has an iPhone 16 or better, preferably iPhone 16 Pro, you can come out to the wedding, and then Jacob, you're gonna put it together. Pay you whatever you want. It can't be more than 8,000. That's my rule, because I was getting quoted like $8,000. But Jacob, we might have to have a conversation if you can put this together for me.
Sure.
because-
If you get footage, I can do the editing.
All right, see, this is why I bring it up on the show. We solve problems on this show. We talk about the power play. We talk about wedding planning. What else is on my mind right now? I got to get fitted for a suit on Sunday, actually. I'm going. That's going to be a lot of fun. Wait, hold up. Harm, check the chat.
The YouTube chat?
Yeah, no, the private chat.
Okay.
I just need to make sure.
I can't remember.
Yes, he
Yes?
he
Are you
has.
sure?
He talked about it in our chat last week.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
All right.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the thing I just typed to Harmon was, has Faber announced his baby yet? That his baby's born. People want their Faber updates. Or no, baby's not born. Sorry, baby's not born. Wow. No, he's having a baby. He's having his, I don't know if he said the gender yet. He's having a child. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop soon. But what I'm trying to say is that the due date, and I'm very happy for them, the due date is the week of my wedding. So Faber was supposed to MC the wedding and be a groomsman, obviously, and he's not going to be able to do either. It doesn't look like. So we're upset about that, but very, very happy for Chris and his lovely wife as well. But people like their Faber updates. Faber no longer a part of the wedding. Maybe he can come shoot the wedding.
Yeah, just add more responsibilities to
You
his
just
plate
took-
when he's already pulling out of everything he'd already prior committed to.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if I should say this, but like him and I, when we're talking, we're holding out hope. You know, baby's a little early, of course, healthy. That's the main thing. Faber's able to make it. Baby's born early. No, don't have to worry about rushing to the hospital or anything. You know, everybody's happy, healthy at home. Faber can slip out.
By the way, because we've gone off on such a tangent here, I do have your guys' predictions from October. So
Nice.
whenever you're ready, Quads, we'll get to that.
Uh-oh.
Harm, any questions about the wedding?
No, I'm good.
Which you're invited to.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Oh my gosh, there's people in the chat who don't know who Faber is. Okay, Chris Faber. He was the old co-host of this show. That makes me feel old. He was the creator of this show. He created this show, did 60 episodes of it alone, changed the format at episode 60, brought me on to co-host with him. We did like 400 episodes together, and then he now works for the Canucks in the content team. And he has a show that we've talked about, I thought, in recent weeks, Canucks Insider Podcast. They let that boy podcast, and they should. Faber's really good at it. So that's who Faber is, for the people asking. That is Chris Faber. That's crazy. That makes me feel old. People don't know who Faber is. Anyways, yeah, Jacob, predictions. Let's go.
All right. So you guys made predictions about the Canucks, and you guys made predictions about the league. Obviously, there's still some time for this to change. I mean, Harm, you predicted Elias Pettersson was going to put up 38 goals and 101 points. So
Yikes.
yeah. Let's see. Quads predicted Brock Boeser 37 goals, Elias Pettersson 103 points, and the Canucks to win the Pacific. So, yeah, okay. Let's see here. League predictions. So for awards, Harmon predicted a McDavid Hart, a Mishkov Calder, a Makar Norris, a Hischier Selke, and a Shesterkin Vezina.
Makar is the only one that has
Yeah.
a chance of coming through there.
Quads, you literally had the exact same, except you had Saros to win the Vezina instead.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we have picked Hellebuck? Seriously.
I don't know. My predictions, I mean, hey, I had McDavid, Hart, Hudson Calder, Makar Norris, Barkov Selke, and Markstrom Vezina. So not much better, but
Well, you're
hopefully
going to do better than any of us.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go. Those were the predictions from our October 2nd show.
Who did I pick for Cup winners? Did I pick Oilers?
I believe you did. We didn't actually do it on the graphic, so I'd have to listen to the show.
That's
But if I'm not mistaken, you picked the Edmonton Oilers. Harm, you picked, I think, the New Jersey Devils, if I remember correctly. I don't remember who I picked, but yeah, there we go.
Great predictions, fellas. Great predictions. I talked about at the start. Washington Capitals are the first team to clinch a playoff spot. Their season has just been so good. First team to 100 points. Don't know what else we can say about the Caps. I did want to talk about the Calgary Flames. Shocking.
All right.
I did want to talk about the Calgary Flames, who put together look, man, like they're not really going away. Is the thing. They're just not going away. They beat the Rangers, they beat the Devils, and now they face the Islanders, and they are right there in the conversation for the playoff spot. Like, you know what I want to stop doing, Harm? I want to stop saying, oh, this team's out of it, or oh, the bottom's falling out on them. This is it. I want to stop saying stuff like that down the stretch. I don't know who's going to get that final wildcard spot. I know it's not going to be Utah, I think. I don't even feel confident saying that. I don't think it's going to be Utah. I will say that. Don't think it's going to be Utah. But I like the Flames. I like the Flames again. They're 2 wins. They might do it. They might do it.
Every time I think the Flames are dead or close to it.
Yes.
On the verge of it. Credit to them. They find a way to gut it out and drag themselves back into the race. But let's not forget that since Feb 1st, their overall record has been like they've been scuffling.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think, especially relative to the Blues and the Canucks, they're still in it. But to me, I don't know, man. I'm still not quite a believer that it's going to happen for them.
But since March 18th, they're 2-0. And their schedule's not all that tough coming up here. Moving on from the Flames, something I want to talk about with the Capitals as well. Alex Ovechkin is 7 goals away from breaking the record. And this question comes in from Karn, who said, how many games does it take for Ovi to beat the record? Give me your prediction. Go look at the Capitals schedule. I'll give you a second to pull it up. I want to hear your prediction. I don't want to hear a number of games. I want to hear what game he does it in. And I want to hear where you think he scores those goals along the way. Are we all in agreement that he's doing it this year?
Yeah.
Okay. Doing it this year.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm not going to pinpoint and say he's going to score here, he's going to score here, he's going to score here. But I bet you
I'm calling Columbus because they play Columbus twice on a back-to-back, so it doubles my odds.
I think I've said this on the show before. I made a bet like 3 months ago on Bet365 on who Ovi would score the record-breaking goal against, and I looked at those back-to-back games, and I thought, I think he'll be within like 1 or 2 goals going into that back-to-back, and I picked Columbus. So I'm really liking that bet right now.
Were they the highest odds?
No, like the highest odds I think were Chicago, the Islanders, because the Islanders, they play the Islanders twice in that time frame as well. And at the time, the Blue Jackets were still like, a decent team on the edge of the playoffs. The Islanders were struggling, and I think people were looking at the Islanders as the more likely option. But I got good odds on Columbus, so
okay,
fingers crossed.
This is not what I want to see happen, but I'm going to give you a prediction. Everybody feel free to write it down. He goes in and ties it against Columbus, ties the record, and then he doesn't score against the Islanders, breaks it on the final game of the regular season against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Everybody comes out to shake his hand. Sidney Crosby's at the front of that, and that is a script that you can't even write.
I like it. I'd be here for that.
Yeah, that's my official prediction. Anything else that you wanted to get to? Bit of a shorter show today.
Just dig into the chat.
Yeah, do we have anything in the chat? That's the thing. Everybody likes to just hear us ramble at this stage of the show. Anyone else?
It's a Friday too. Like Friday, we go a little off the rails on Fridays.
Yeah. Anyone else has become just listen to us talk and then people react to what we're talking about. Ed is asking if we can do a summer show on my hat collection. I've got a lot of hats. I have a good rotation. I got the Milwaukee hat. That's my favorite hat by far. Where else are we here? Oh, people are asking how the BZ4X gives you the solo HOV lane access. All you got to do is register your car. As you register your EV and you get the EV OK sticker, that thing that says OK on the back.
By the way, that sticker's so ugly. I just have to say that they should do something cool like a lightning bolt or just the OK. Like I've seen it. I've been like, man, whoever's in charge of designing that sticker
no one's stopping you from putting a lightning bolt sticker next to your OK sticker. If you
but the OK sticker just ruins it.
Please buy a Toyota BZ4X, folks. Our thanks to Toyota, our lovely sponsor, Toyota.
Question from Mike Weller that you guys might want to dig into. Should the Oilers be worried about Draisaitl and McDavid getting injured, or is it just convenient load management?
What happened here? I saw McDavid got cross-checked last night by Josh Morrissey. What happened to Leon Draisaitl?
I don't know. I was so focused on the Blues game yesterday that
I think Draisaitl, something happened, and it was this morning he just wasn't on the ice for practice. And then I think Knobloch said like he's day to day, or might have even been like
Skinner
more
left the
ominous
game
than that.
too, didn't he?
Yeah, they're racking up injuries.
I texted Bag Milk. I said we have about 15 minutes to call on Canucks Convo if we want. We could just end the show, but I did text him and say, "Do you want to hop on Canucks Convo immediately?" The people are looking for Bag Milk.
All right, injury updates courtesy Tony Brar of Oilers TV as of 2 hours ago. McDavid and Draisaitl are both day to day, maybe a week. Stuart Skinner is quote fine, and Frederick is at least another 2 weeks away.
Do you want to be on Canucks Convo?
Quaz is currently on the phone with Bag Milk right now. He's muted.
Jacob, can you do it on the phone?
Yeah. I mean, like if you put it on speakerphone and hold it up to your mic, people will be able to hear him.
Okay, we'll do a mic test. All right, ready? Bag Milk, we're going to test this. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Quad, yeah.
Can you guys hear him?
It's a little quiet, but it'll work.
Okay, what happened to Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid?
So Leon, in the game against Utah, he kind of like had a weird fall. It was one of those ones where he was in a puck battle, right? And he just kind of like went down a little bit weird. He finished the game, but you could tell by like, there's a compilation video on Twitter you can find of him grimacing a little bit. Like he played excellently and he played well. And on the broadcast yesterday, Bob Stauffer, who covers the team closely, said that if this was a playoff game, he's playing. It's no question about it. But you can tell he's uncomfortable. So he seems to have gotten banged up with some kind of lower body injury from that little spill. As for Connor McDavid, last night he left in the second intermission. So he missed morning skate for the Oilers yesterday, but nobody knew why. But kind of the word on the street is that he's been banged up for a little bit now. It's not like one thing or this thing, which are kind of nagging items. And last night he took, again, it was like an innocent-looking exchange with Josh Morrissey where something just looked like it got tweaked. And he came out for an extra couple of shifts. I think it was 1 or 2 shifts before the end of the second period. But he didn't come back out for the third. And I think that the timeline that the Oilers gave today is a week or less for both of them. So the Oilers are going to miss about 3 games. But yeah, obviously not ideal, but it was 2 instances with incredibly bad luck where an innocent kind of looking play or a battle that happens 15 times a game resulted in injuries to the Oilers' 2 best players.
What's the vibe like in Edmonton? We just went over our season predictions, and I called them the Cup favorite. And this is Harmon's question to you: how worried are you about Edmonton's Cup chances?
I'm not worried about it, provided that those guys can be healthy for the playoffs. I mean, I'm worried about it for a myriad of reasons, but the fact that those 2 are injured for what seems to be a short-term issue, I don't think that really should affect anything. Like, I've got a much bigger, so Harmon, to answer your question, I've got a much bigger issue with, is the goaltending good enough? And I'm going to tell you, Conversation fans, the answer is no. So, like, to me, that's a much bigger conversation and problem for the Oilers' aspirations of winning a cup than this short-term trade to McDavid and Draisaitl. Like I said, we're going to miss about 3 games. There's 2 poor teams in that 3 that the Oilers should probably be able to win even without their 2 best players. But they've also got a game mixed in there against Dallas. And, like, am I nervous about how McDavid and Draisaitl, his roster, looked against them, knowing that we also have some issues between the pipes with consistency? Yeah, of course. How could you not be? But I also think that if you are any team, if you lose your 2 best players, it's going to be a concern. It's going to be worrying. And you're going to be like, what is going to happen now? But I look at the Minnesota Wild. They lost Kaprizov, and they still managed to do it. The Oilers are going to have to do the same thing. Fortunately, some of their secondary scoring issues that we've talked about on this show in the past, in my last segments, have started to round into form. PDO is looking a little bit more like it's normalizing. Some of the guys you expect to score are scoring. So I'm hopeful that continues. But if you're going to ask me how nervous am I, 6 of 10. If they lose to Seattle tomorrow and it's like, oh my goodness, they are not in the fight, they are out of the mix, then that number gets ramped up significantly. But in the short term, I'm kind of taking it day by day, looking at the rest of the roster and thinking, all right, Victor Arvidsson, Jeff Skinner, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, all of you guys, Adam Henrique, all of you guys got to step up and start chipping in now because, one, more opportunity, and two, we need it. So we'll see what happens. I think tomorrow's game against Seattle, it's the late game on Hockey Night in Canada. It's going to be an interesting kind of tell of where the team's mentality is at.
Never know who's going to stop by on Canucks Conversation. Bag Milk, thanks for doing this. I'll call you in like 10 minutes.
Thanks, fellas.
There he is. Bag Milk of Oilers Nation.
I must say it actually sounded okay on the live, and I'll be able to clean it up for the audio pod. That wasn't the worst possible hit. Like it seemed so bootleg at the start, but it actually ended up working out.
Fun fact, every single episode of Canucks Conversation, like for the first 100 episodes, if we had a guest, that was how it was recorded. Just so everybody knows. Like we had a mic that we would just put it on speakerphone right next to it. That was how we recorded. In fact, there were times when we would use one mic when it was just Faber hosting, when it would be one mic and he would just hold it like that while he talks and then does exactly what I just did. I'm glad it worked out, and people in the chat really liked it. People like having Bag Milk on the show. Voice of reason out there in Edmonton. This report came from Frank Saravelli today, and I want to close this, okay? Frank Saravelli reporting that there are 7 to 8 teams who would be chomping at the bit to sign Rick Tocchet, and just trying to figure out how this situation between the Canucks and Tocchet is going to end. Obviously, earlier this week, we talked about the quotes with Patrick Allvin from Pierre LeBrun, where he spoke about wanting Rick Tocchet signed, and ideally he's there and they get this conversation to the finish line sooner rather than later, whereas Tocchet is very, very comfortable waiting on this and said, I'm focused on getting this team into the playoffs, and he'll evaluate after. Obviously, we know there's an element of this where Rick Tocchet is looking at it and just going to ask, is this the best situation for me? I have no doubt, and why would I? I have no doubt that there's interest in Rick Tocchet around the league. And ultimately, that's going to lead to Rick Tocchet being able to make a decision. Like, this isn't a situation where, you wait until you get fired and then maybe there's no suitors for you, or there's fewer suitors. Like, Tocchet is coming off of Jack Adams when he's coming off a year where I know there's a lot of angst in the market, but like nationally and around the league, I'm pretty sure a lot of teams look at what the Canucks were able to do this year, and they look at Rick Tocchet as part of the reason this team's even still in a playoff spot with all the things that went wrong for them. I know dump and chase hockey, I know low event hockey gets a lot of conversation in this market, but I am just telling you, just based on my conversations around the league, and obviously as well, you hear this conversation with Frank, with the guys over at 650 this morning, that he's well regarded around the league.
Yeah, I mean, all you need to know is the fact that he was one of the assistants for Team Canada. That's a massive opportunity, and it doesn't surprise me when Frank reports that there are several teams that would be interested in Tocchet if he was ever to shake loose. I think a lot of people look at the steps that the Canucks took defensively 2 years ago when Tocchet first took over. Like how significantly that raised the floor of this team and took the Canucks from a spot where they had some exciting young pieces, but in a spot where a lot of rebuilding teams or retooling teams end up stuck in, where they've got the talent, but they're loosey-goosey defensively, don't have the best habits, and surrender a lot of goals, and they're just prone to too many mistakes. And you look at not only the progress that, the Canucks have made in that regard under Tocchet, but look at Ottawa taking the next step and looking like a likely playoff team. It's a similar sort of change that Travis Green has brought to the Ottawa Senators, where they've improved night and day defensively. Now, it's been a challenge for them to score goals at times too, but you look at how that core has taken the next step. I'm sure a lot of teams look at that type of model and template of, if we've got a tire fire of a situation, or not even a tire fire of a situation, but a team that hasn't figured it out defensively, but has some promise. How do we take the next step forward in a retool type situation? I'm sure a lot of teams like that would be interested in talking, and maybe even some contenders that if they bow out early.
Mike Lavalley in the chat asked this. He said, "What do the Canucks do if he walks? He being Tocchet. Do they promote Manny Malhotra?" Obviously, that's going to be my pick. Friend of the show, Manny Malhotra. Whoa. Watch it. This is a friend of ours.
I know, but you got to make sure that you pick the absolute best candidate and not just go with the most convenient in-house option.
That's fair.
And
Like
guy
these
like-
are Quinn Hughes's like most important remaining seasons on his contract. You gotta be willing to pay whatever it takes to land the best coach possible if Tocchet walks.
It is also worth noting that Quinn Hughes really likes Rick Tocchet, and it's called Adam Foote the best coach he's ever had. Worth mentioning those two things.
Mhm. And I think a lot of fans forget about that when talking about Tocchet. And with the point of Malhotra, like I think Malhotra is going to be an NHL head coach soon, but probably not in a year or two. I think he's going to spend more time in the minors. Like the fact that Montreal went out and got Martin St. Louis, and I think it's hard to argue with St. Louis being a good NHL coach at this point with no coaching experience. That's rare. That doesn't happen very often. A guy like Malhotra is going to probably follow the more regular path, which is like, hey, have 3 or 4 or 5 really good years in the AHL, maybe like go on a playoff run, and then you get your shot in the NHL. Like that's usually what happens with coaches.
What happened to Jeremy Colleton? Does anybody know off the top of their head?
He's an assistant coach in the NHL, is he not?
Yes, Devils. Assistant coach with the Devils. Okay. I also liked him. I also really liked Jeremy Colleton. Basically, anybody who comes on this show, I will go to bat for you. Unfortunately, the organization has a tendency to trade those players away. We were going over this recently. The list of players who've been on the show, one Venn diagram, and also gotten traded within a couple of years of doing the show, or just being friends with Faber and Quads. The Venn diagram of that. It's a lot in the middle there. You got Adam Gaudette, who obviously played Warzone with us. Jack Rathbone, who also played Warzone with us. Who else has been traded with? It's a friend. I mean, Nils Höglander's been on this show a few times. Holding out hope for him. Aiden McDonough.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all coming back to me. It's a lot of AHLers. Aiden McDonough, Zach McEwen. Those guys were all regulars on the show. And
You know what?
they
It's not quite
traded.
the Basant Motors curse, though.
No, not yet. Not yet. Not yet. It's not. Not yet. It's not. Is this why no one wants to talk to us anymore, Harm?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. Anything else either of you wanted to get to?
No.
We ended up going long. I said it was going to be a short show, and I lied. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day. I am taking Columbus Blue Jackets money line. Simple. There's one game on tonight. It's
Well,
Blue
hold
Jackets,
on.
Penguins. What?
Are you just glossing over the fact that your bet last night was awful?
Oh, what did I? What did I
happened?
pick? What did I do?
Didn't you pick last night? You bet against Colorado, I think.
Dude, you better know. If you come with the heat, you better know. What
Yes,
my bet
yes.
was.
You bet Ottawa over Colorado. Colorado
Doesn't
won.
sound like me.
Colorado
Doesn't
won
sound like me.
5-1.
Thank you for that, Jacob.
Are you in a 3-game losing skid?
Yes,
Yes.
I am, Harm.
And like
But I'm
two
going
of them have been blowout losses, like early payouts in the first or second period.
Okay, we're sticking with the underdogs tonight. We're going with the Columbus Blue Jackets to right the ship. Minus 105. They are the underdogs tonight in Pittsburgh. We're taking that. Columbus Blue Jackets money line. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat-trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between is amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use the code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Crush that ad read. All right.
The Blue Jackets, just like Quads, struggling right now. Look at it bounce back.
Looking to bounce back. Take some NyQuil. Helps you bounce back. All right. We'll close it out there. For my co-host, Harmon Dial, and our technical producer, Jacob Lazar. Have a great weekend, folks. We'll be back on Monday to talk about everything that happens from now until then. My name is Dave Woodrelli. Thanks so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.